there has been an increase in security by Major League Baseball and the other leagues to monitor these kinds of things and to make sure the umpires and players are not involved in situations like the one Hoberg was involved in.
Let's hit the inside scoop with FT senior insider Ken Rosenthal, fresh notes column out there in The Athletic. I want to start with a city that needs to pay attention to their Phillies and not to their Eagles just because they're in the Super Bowl. Do you think that the Phillies could be players for Kyle Tucker after this season? Chances are not likely he's going to sign back to the Cubs. I'm sure the Yankees would be involved. But can you get into what you wrote about covering the Phillies and their payroll this morning in the notes column?
Yes, what I mentioned was that the Phillies have $75 million just about coming off their payroll at the end of this season. Now, I also said that this number is deceptive. They're most likely going to re-sign Schwarber to some deal. He's a potential free agent. And they almost have to re-sign JT Realmuto as well because they have no internal options. So the $75 million will be much less. But at the same time, their team is getting older. Their whole core is getting older. They're in their 30s to mid-30s. And they're going to need an infusion of talent in addition to what they already have, which is really good. So that's why Kyle Tucker could be someone that makes sense for them. As I wrote, they're going to need to be in the next few years creative and smart and aggressive because this window is not going to be open with these players forever.
Talk about another superstar who's been snubbed, not just for awards. When I read your notes column, kind of hit on what Bobby Witt has really been snubbed. I didn't realize you were a video game guy.
Well, I'm mildly a video game guy, but when I saw this big announcement that the cover of the show this year would be Paul Skeens, Gunnar Henderson, and Ellie De La Cruz, I thought, well, that's cool. But the best young player in the game is Bobby Witt Jr. And if you're trying to honor young players, where is that guy? So, yeah, I wrote about it today in my notes column, got this standard kind of wishy-washy, no comment pretty much from a PR person over at Sony. They basically said, we chose our guys. Every year there's controversy when we choose our guys. It's always so difficult for us to choose who should be on the cover. But to me, by any objective measure, if you're looking at the best young players in the game and you're picking three, I would think Bobby Witt Jr. at 24 years old has to be one of them. Now, he's older than all of those guys, not by much, but a little bit. So maybe they thought he's too old. I don't know.
What? Maybe he just needs a better agent. Ken, I don't know. Maybe they called his agent. Isn't his agent his dad? Wasn't his agent? No, his agent's not his dad, is it?
His agent is his dad, but I don't believe his agent was necessarily involved with this. This is EA and Sony's choice, not Bobby Witt Jr.'s or Bobby Witt.
Yeah, he didn't get the call. I can actually step in on this one too and help. He didn't get the call because I actually know his marketing agent pretty well. He does a damn good job. So I'm going to back him up there because if he got the call, they would have gotten the deal done.
We know who Scott was rooting for.
Ellie, baby. Well, if you're going to have three, you might as well have four. I get the point, but maybe he was too old. Oh. And also, I have a guess too that if you're looking at data and, you know, how many, say, Royals fans are playing the sport, and I know Bobby's technically a national superstar, that stuff does matter, right? Kansas City's a small market.
Scott. All right, that's a fair question. But look at the other markets that are represented. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. It's not like we're talking about a big West Coast or big East Coast city that is getting a player on there because they are, and because of this market size. It's not like that at all. Actually, I could have mentioned that in the column that it doesn't make sense from that perspective. Actually, to have somebody in the Midwest might have been advisable considering that all three of the other guys, well, Cincinnati's not really an eastern city, but it's east of Kansas City, and Pittsburgh and Baltimore certainly are eastern cities. So there's no logical explanation.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, let's talk about a guy from Iowa, Ken. Pat Hoberg got fired from Major League Baseball, and this has been going on for apparently almost a year, this whole investigation thing. He knew about it. So he umpired the whole year knowing that this was coming down the thing. And then he didn't umpire. He umpired some of the year,
I told you they took him off the field as soon as they knew what was going on.
Well, so when did we say this came down?
The decision came down yesterday, but before that, I was in July. We actually broke this story, Evan Drellick and I, when he was out. I can't remember exactly what it was, but midsummer, I believe, is when we found out that he was not on the field.
Did you guys know why he was out? Did you know why he was out?
I don't recall at the time if we reported it, but I believe we knew. I just don't know if we reported it. I don't have the story in front of me.
We're being
no,
told
that's
May
fine.
31st.
Certainly we had heard that.
Yeah, we're being told May 31st might have been the day.
Okay.
So just for context.
But my question is this something we're going to see more often, and not only in baseball but in other sports? Because this is crazy. Remember the NBA thing where they had the guy that was betting on games? I know Hoberg, Pat said he didn't bet on baseball, and they shared an account and this whole deal. But with gambling sites everywhere, we're in it, right? This is something we need to stop. How does Major League Baseball stop this? Other sports stop this? And what's the next step? I don't know what the next step is.
Actually, it's a good question, AJ, because certainly the proliferation of gambling and gambling sites has happened, and with the cooperation of the professional sports leagues, right? So I would imagine, and this might be worth something that we should look into, maybe something we should look into, there has been an increase in security by Major League Baseball and the other leagues to monitor these kinds of things and to make sure the umpires and players are not involved in situations like the one Hoberg was involved in. I don't know that for a fact, but it would stand to reason that because of this all being so legal now, and because of players and umpires and anyone else being so vulnerable to it, yeah, you'd want increased security, you'd want an increased presence, you'd want increased investigations. And you asked if we will see more of this. I suspect we will see more of this because there are people in all walks of life who gamble and gamble at times to excess.
I still want to come in here with my point on regulation too, Ken, because I think people are living under a rock if they don't think that this stuff has been going on forever. And the only reason it's coming more so to the forefront is because it's trackable now. Pat was using apps that could be tracked. In the past, Pat would be doing the same thing with his buddy. They would just be doing it on the Cayman Islands account that everyone was using when, I was growing up, right? Or name that random other island where this was all being run on apps and on websites. So I just want to make sure I'm firm on that point, because I do think the regulation is putting this more at the forefront of the news and also catching the offenders, which we didn't do well for a long time. To act like this hasn't happened, it's just that he would have never been caught in the past.
Scott, that's a great point. And I just went back, AJ, and checked that story. We did report at the time that it was for gambling. When we wrote that story, it was in mid-June. So yes, this is something that obviously can be traced much more easily than in the past because of just what you said, Scott. That's exactly how Hoberg got caught. And what happened there was indicative of what could happen to others as well. So I don't know where this is going long term, but I do expect we're going to see this from time to time. And you've also seen stories about players who have been threatened by people who are involved in gambling and getting on them, whether through social media or some other ways. And that's something that has arisen as a result of this. I don't love it. I don't love any aspect of it, but it is reality, not just for sports leagues right now, but for sports media companies. And we can't deny that. So it's pervasive. And that's why the regulation and the discipline of it needs to be constantly in a situation where it's vigilant.
More in a minute, but first, a quick word from our sponsor of this video.
Hey, Valentine's Day is coming up, and we have the recommendation for you to check out right now. Don't wait. It's 1-800-Flowers.com. This year, we're partnering with 1-800-Flowers to make sure you're a Valentine's legend with an exclusive offer for the FT fam. It's double the roses for free. When you buy 1 dozen, they're going to double your bouquet to 2 dozen roses. It's the perfect way to wow her without breaking the bank. 1-800-Flowers always delivers. Let them dominate this holiday. It's what they do best.
Think about everyone in your fam that deserves some love on Valentine's Day. I sent a bouquet to my daughter at college, and it lit up her day. I also added an awesome vase to the order for her, so she's got it all.
All roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak, cared for every step of the way, and shipped fresh to ensure lasting beauty. Don't wait. Think ahead this year. Make it easy and get that deal right now. When you order 1 dozen, they'll double the rose bouquet for free. That's the FT deals that we're always looking out for. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/FT. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/FT.
And now back to the video.
Are we going to ever figure out the mystery of San Diego? Especially with AJ Preller coming out and saying, we need to add another arm, we need to add a couple more bats. And yet we're hearing that Michael King is available. We're hearing that Dylan Cease is available. What is the mystery that we have to try to figure out in San Diego?
What exactly they're doing. And it's not clear because they are talking about those guys. And AJ Preller has made this clear to me in the past, and other GMs have too. When you have a player in his walk year and you're not certain to re-sign him, you're going to listen. Now, granted, the Blue Jays are not listening on Vlad Jr. I get it. They're trying to sign him. But generally speaking, those players you listen on and you at least explore the market value for them in a trade. Yet the Padres, as AJ Preller said the other day, need an additional arm or two and an additional bat or two. Where they get that and who those people might be, I don't know, because the free agent market has thinned considerably. You could do it in a trade. He's a very creative GM, as we've seen. He is not bound by any calendar restrictions. We've seen him make trades in March, April, May, whenever. So I don't know exactly what they're doing, and I'm not sure they know exactly, because remember, all of their offseason maneuvering is taking place against the backdrop of the lawsuit that is going on between the late owner Peter Seidler's widow and his brothers for control of the team. So where they are financially, that's not clear. Their payroll is up. It's up because of internal raises for the most part. They haven't done anything really of consequence except for sign catcher Elias Diaz. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the next few weeks and leading up to opening day, because that will tell us where they are. And actually, the Michael King contract, if you saw it the other day, 1 year, $7.75 million, with $3.75 million in a buyout that will not be paid until the end of the season. That tells you something too, because they're pushing money back, and it shows you that at least for this season, they're under some type of financial restriction.
Okay, Ken. Speaking of another GM that's under financial restriction, Jerry Dipoto came out and said, hey, the Mariners, we're the perfect team. What'd you think of what he said? Because they haven't done anything this offseason really either. And, hey, I think we're great. We have a great farm system. The fans are happy. Everyone's happy. And we're going to see how it goes.
Well, the fans are not happy, first of all. And Jerry Dipoto knows that. Their fans are frustrated by this team's unwillingness to spend what they should be spending to support a rotation that is arguably the best in the game, and a rotation you will have together for only so long. So yes, they've added Donovan Solano and Jorge Polanco. They're decent players. There's no question about that. Accomplished veterans, but they're not stars. And what this team really needs is one more huge bat. And the place to do it would have been first base. But they weren't involved in Christian Walker. They don't seem to be involved in Pete Alonso. And it seems that the problem with this organization is that ownership is unwilling to go an extra mile with payroll. Now, Jerry Dipoto is not going to sit here and tell us that and rip his owners by kind of saying, hey, guys, I'm just kind of hamstrung right now. He's never going to say that. He's always going to put his best foot forward and best face on the situation. Every GM would do that. But at the same time, fans know, media knows, people know that this is not the best possible version of the Mariners, because the best possible version of the Mariners would include more offense. Put it that way.
The Royals tried to add more offense. The Royals tried to add Anthony Santander. My question to you, because you hear all, some of the inner workings of these things, it came out that he had already agreed when the Royals came back with their final to last offer. He had already agreed to the Blue Jays offer. Have you ever heard of anybody going back on an agreement in the sense of like what Santander did, in the sense where he didn't go back? He said, hey, I agree to what the Blue Jays are offering me, and no, I can't take your offer, even though supposedly it might have been higher in a today value.
So you're asking if a player ever had a deal in place and then said, we're good, I'm going to go over here. I'm sure it's happened, Eric, and I'm probably someone who's reported on things like that. But generally speaking, that's not an honorable thing to do. And he had agreed with Toronto. Now, people had asked, I saw after I reported that, hey, what took the Royals so long? Well, they were negotiating with him. They had been negotiating with him, the shorter deals. And they got to a certain point, but by that time he was down the road with Toronto. That does happen. That's not that unusual. But I have not heard of players going back. It was just an interesting thing to me. And I reported today that the Angels were in on a shorter term deal with Santander as well. He wanted the $92.5 million, even though 2/3 of it's deferred, the present day value is much lower, and the 3 or 4 year deal he might have gotten from the Royals or Angels probably would have been similar in present day value. But a lot of times players like the big number, agents like the big number, and that's what he took. He also took a 5-year commitment where the other teams were not offering that length.
Ken, I remember a guy, Jermaine Dye, when we won the World Series in 2005. He signed with the White Sox. Another team came in at the end. I don't remember the team, but they said, hey, whatever he signed for, let's say he signed for $5 million. Another team came in and said, we'll give you $6 million. And he said, too late. I already agreed with the White Sox. I can't go back to him and change my mind. It was an honorable thing. Most players, if they've agreed, now I'm sure there's been times where they've changed their mind, but most players that I've ever heard of, once they say yes to a team, they go to that team. I mean, it's just the right, like you said, it's the honorable thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And if your agent's being right and truthful to you, it's what you should do.
Right, absolutely, AJ. And granted, sometimes funky things happen in negotiations. It's just the nature of it. And especially in situations like the winter meetings where there's a lot of action and with bigger names, sometimes things are really flying. I remember the Aaron Judge negotiations. There was a lot going on those last couple of days. But at the same time, players and their agents generally know which direction they're going in, and they don't change on a dime like that. Obviously, if the money from someone else is much greater, then maybe they think about it. And I'm sure it's happened. I can't imagine it. This has not happened, but I just don't think it's common at all.
Also, if you want the player badly enough, you make your best offer, you go for it, you're aggressive, you get stuff done early. And if not, which many teams do, they pay the price for that. And the Royals have been aggressive in the past, but just throwing that out there because I'm a little bit sick of signings in February. But it is what it is. That's how these front offices like to play. But I'm not bitter about it. Anyway, Ken, thank you.
Well, actually,
right?
Scott, let me make a point on that because this is, in my opinion, a definite strategy that the teams are taking with the remaining free agents. They're essentially bleeding them. And they're essentially saying, we will wait and wait and wait until we get the price we want. I don't necessarily care for that because, as you said, Scott, if you want a player, go get him. But this is an effective negotiating strategy. And because there is no deadline and nothing is to stop any team from continuing on and on and on with players, when it gets to this point of the offseason, and I'm not talking about Alonso and Bregman and Pivetta so much. I'm talking about the lesser players, the medium range players. These guys are in a tough spot because the teams are trying to get them to sign minor league deals, non-roster deals, and they all want major league deals, and they just keep waiting, and there's a glut of these players. There's not enough jobs to go around, and for the owners and the teams, this is the way that they believe is the best way to go, and I cannot argue with that from their perspective. It's just not a kinder, gentler form of going about it.
Yeah, it's not great business. Hey, we don't love you enough to give you this money, so we're going to squeeze you into February. But more from Ken coming up on Thursday on Fair Territory. Ken, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.